It was the scariest time of my life, a night I'll never forget. It was 8:04 in the evening of Monday, October 3rd, 2004. I was in the emergency room of Duke Medical Center in Durham, North Carolina, when suddenly my heart stopped. If you had been there with me, you would have seen doctors, nurses, and technicians working together like a well-orchestrated team as they worked against time with one goal in mind: to save my life. It was then I received the gift only a donor can give. It had started 6 weeks prior. I wasn't feeling right. I drove to Charlotte for a doctor's appointment. I told my doctor, "I think my childhood asthma is back. I'm having trouble breathing and I'm sweating like a pig." He said, "Okay, let's take a look." I play poker, so when he looked at me, I knew he held a losing hand. Reluctantly, he said, "Andy, you don't have asthma. It's congestive heart failure. We need to get you to a cardiologist and we need to move quickly." In no time at all, the cardiologist admitted me to Presbyterian Hospital. In less than 4 hours, my life had been turned completely upside down. Imagine this. You're there, but you're not really there. I wasn't being myself. I was in a fog. I was in shock, but there was one thing I had to do and hadn't done yet: call my wife. If you were listening into this conversation, you would have heard something like, "Hi, honey, I won't be home for dinner." "Well, the doctor is sending me to the hospital because I had congestive heart failure." "Are you still there?" "I'm going to need you. I'm asking you to meet me at the hospital." This began my journey to get a crash course in a foreign language, medicine. As you can imagine, things kept moving fast. They wasted no time. One of the first things I learned about was EF, ejection fraction. This is the measurement of the pressure the heart exerts as it contracts to push blood throughout the body. In a normal, healthy adult, this number is 55 or better. My reading was 34. I knew I was in deep trouble. Needles, exams, x-rays, blood work, repeated nearly nonstop for almost a week. It felt like an elephant was standing on my chest, and I was in agony. By the way, they think my heart damage was caused by a virus from a simple summer cold. A Sunday morning was the worst, as my condition deteriorated quickly. About 11 a.m., a man I didn't know walked in. No ID, just the official white coat. Grabbing my chart, he flipped it open, paused a moment, looked at me, and said, "Anyone talk to you about a transplant?" This was news to my wife and me. The shock caused us to come unraveled. I couldn't say anything, but my wife more than made up for that with language and volume I can't say here. This doctor left quickly and called my cardiologist. The next morning, my cardiologist filled us in and made arrangements for me to be transferred to Duke Hospital so I could get the care that I needed. After being medevaced to Duke, I learned about UNOS, United Network for Organ Sharing. UNOS is the national organization that maintains a list ranking the needs of potential recipients. As makes sense, when an organ becomes available, you start with number 1 on the list and work your way down until you find a matching recipient. I was number 28. I want to take a moment here to dispel some myths. There are a number of factors considered when you get put on the list. These factors include such things as your blood type, your age, your severity of need, and geographic considerations, because a transplant has a limited window of opportunity. Notice I did not say they look at your political connections, athletic success, family bloodlines, or your bank account. You cannot buy a transplant. Those things I just mentioned do not enter into the UNOS decision about who is offered the organ for transplant. It is important to remember that anyone's position on the list can change quickly depending on their condition and that of others on the list. It was a race against four things. Number one, time. In February 2004, there were 87,000 people waiting for a transplant. This past February, that number had gone up to over 121,000 people waiting for an organ transplant, and over 4,000 of those were waiting for a heart. My concern was, could I hang on long enough for a heart to be donated that matched my needs? Number two, availability. For example, there is a window of only 4 to 6 hours for a heart to be recovered from the donor, transported to the hospital, and transplanted into the recipient. Number three, suitability. This encompasses many things, primarily blood type, tissue match, and medical history. And finally, number four, willingness. Is the recipient willing to receive the heart? This willingness was my stumbling block. I wrestled with knowing that someone had to die for me to live. I wasn't okay knowing that someone had died for me to receive their heart, and the more I thought about it, the more I struggled with the idea. Life is full of ironies, and this was a biggie. My kidneys and liver were failing. My ejection fraction, which should have been at least 55, had been at 34, was now at 15, and my heart was failing. I was dying. It was a race against time. It had been 11 days since I entered Duke Hospital, and I had been number one on the list for 3 days by UNOS. My prospects for a heart becoming available were unknown. As fate would have it, it was that day a doctor came to me and said, "Andy, we have a heart for you." Immediately I said no. He asked why. For the next 35 minutes we argued, almost to my last breath. It boiled down to this. I didn't think God would accept me because I would not be the same person I was when I was born. Time was slipping away. Finally, the doctor said, "Andy, the heart is simply a pump. It has no emotion and isn't how Hollywood glamorizes it." For some reason, this gave me enough freedom to reluctantly say yes. Still filled with doubt, I was on my way to the operating room. Right before I got wheeled into surgery, I looked up, and between my feet was the spire of Duke Chapel, beaming in the brilliant moonlight. It was in that moment I knew I had made the right decision and everything would be okay. I would be given a chance, new chance for life with a second heart. The median life of a heart transplant recipient is 10 years. My transplant was over 12 years ago, and I am like a Timex that took a licking and keeps on ticking. I have never met the family of the person giving me his heart, but will be eternally grateful to that family and their son for the gift that gave me life, or I wouldn't be here today. All because he chose to be a donor. Unfortunately, there are many people that are never given the same gift I was. The average wait time for a heart is 247 days. On the average, what you find is that every 10 minutes, another name is added to the UNOS list, and sadly, an average of 22 people die each day while waiting simply because the organ they needed didn't become available in time. What all this means is there is a shortage of people signed up to be donors. So the easiest way that you can help is to sign up to be a donor the next time you renew your driver's license. Great things have happened to me since my transplant. I have lived 12 years. I have 3 new grandchildren. And I have happily remarried after the passing of my first wife. If it weren't for my organ donor, I wouldn't be here today. And I almost said no. I'll leave you with this. Become a donor to give the gift and change the life of those that live.